Hi. In this video, I would like to show you how you can build an AI WordPress admin assistant, which is powered by or controlled by WhatsApp and natural language. So this will basically enable you to do anything that the WordPress backend has to offer, but by using WhatsApp and natural language. And the first thing that might come to your mind would be, why use WhatsApp if there's already a WordPress backend in the first place, right? And the reason for this is, I have built websites on WordPress a couple of years, and what I have found is that many customers, many clients are still, despite the ubiquity of WordPress, having problems with dealing with the backend because it's too complicated or too cumbersome. And WhatsApp, on the other hand, is so intuitive and everybody knows how to use it and everybody does use it, that it makes sense to use this as a client instead. And at the same time, you can, of course, use natural language, right? So if you can imagine, if you have a client who has a WordPress site and he wants to add a new user, wants to create posts, wants to create a new page, or added his address somewhere, then what this leads to, if they have an adversity in regards to the WordPress backend, that they contact you as the website creator, and you are obliged to, as a kind of personal service, to do these tasks for them, right? So why not have an AI assistant which is able to understand the language from the client and at the same time is also able to connect with the WordPress backend? And this was the reason for this project. And we obviously won't be able to recreate any feature and any function from the WordPress backend right now. But this is not even necessary because, there's a concept in programming called CRUD, CRUD, which stands for create, read, update, and delete. And this is basically a concept which refers to the fact that a software must be able to perform these 4 tasks on data. And this is what we're going to do. And we're going to focus on posts. So create posts, read posts, and so on. And these will stand as a representative for all other features that you might have to deal with in the WordPress backend, like pages, comments, and so on. So you can take this concept and recreate it on your own to your or your client's needs. And what you're going to need for this is, first of all, obviously WordPress, a WordPress account where you can test this on. Then a WhatsApp account, obviously, so you're going to use a WhatsApp business account for this. Then we are going to use Voiceflow, which will represent the heart of the backend, where we will control the flow of the AI assistant. And then we will use Flowbridge to connect our AI assistant in Voiceflow with the WhatsApp account. And this will not be so much a tutorial rather than a showcase of this project that I have done, but I'm happy to share all the files and functions that you're going to need to replicate this for your own project. All right, now let's first take a look into a little demo. And I am in WhatsApp right now. I'm using the web interface, as you can see, and I'm going to initiate the conversation and pretend that I am the business owner who wants to take care or maintain his WordPress site, right? And in addition to that, I've also prepared a WordPress backend, and here you can see a couple of posts. These are just some sample posts. Let's say I'm a car dealership or something like this. And as you can see, I have a couple of posts. One of them is in draft, and the other ones are just basically usual WordPress posts as you would expect them. So I'm heading back to WhatsApp and I'm going to start the conversation. So let's just say hi. And the first thing you would want to do in this case is to log into your site, right? So I will be asked for the username. And after this, I will have to provide an API key, which I've already provided. And then the last thing will be the domain. I'm going to take my site, script.com, hit enter, and then we'll see that I'm logged in basically right now. So what would you like to do? So let's say I want to read all my posts, or I want to see all my posts. And what it will do then is that it will retrieve all the posts that we have just seen from the WordPress backend. And as you can see, it only pulled the one that are published. And it also gives us the ID of the post in parentheses. And of course, this is just a sample, right? This is just an example of how you can provide this to the user. So this is a bulleted list, and which dynamically pulls all the WordPress posts from the backend. You could expand this to also showing the excerpt, for instance, or the URL, the link to it, and so on and so forth. And so what's your next step? So let's say I'd like to write a new post. And then we can see that it will give me the option to basically write this post on my own, or to be able to assist. And now you can see the power of this, because this obviously is something that you can't do from the WordPress backend itself, right? Of course, there are plugins that will help you in regards to AI generated content, but you can implement this right into the assistant you're using right now, right? So you can basically extend all the features into automation steps outside of the WordPress ecosystem, right? So let's say I want to write on my own, and then it will ask me for the title of the post. And let's say, I don't know, our grand opening in Chicago next week. And this will be the title of my post. Is this correct? Yes, it is. All right, great. So now let's start writing. And now I can basically start writing the blog post itself. So this is a new post about our opening in Chicago. And what it will then do is to actually publish this. And how this works, now I haven't included any type of confirmations yet, but you can see, check the result. How else can I help you? And if we head back to the WordPress backend and refresh the page, then you can see not only has it created the post itself and the title, it also gave us a basically AI generated content based on what we have told it, right? You can of course control this by controlling the prompt or rephrasing the prompt how you would want to do this. But at the end of the day, this is how it works. And if we head back to WhatsApp, then you can basically go on with the conversation. So this is just a little demo of how powerful this feature actually is. All right, now let's go through the flow together and see how you can build and rebuild this. Now, first of all, I'm in the agent right now. And if you check your workflows, then you can see that there are basically 1 to 3 parts. And we can ignore the session part right now, but we're going to jump into the home flow. And if we take a look at this post section, then this is exactly the part that I was talking about in the beginning, that this is just a representative of any other resource and feature and function that you could probably rebuild for your own site and for your own client site. And so you can see that we have created this or replicated this concept by using the create read, update, and delete structure. So each flow would be responsible for a different function in regards to these 4 steps. And if we go into the WordPress admins, then into the WordPress references to the REST API docs, then you can see where all of this is coming from, because here you can see that we have the post resource and basically any other function and resource from the WordPress backend that you can control by using this agent. So you could create the categories, and you can maintain the pages, you can maintain the users, the themes, anything that basically is available in the WordPress backend by using its API. And we're using the posts, and you could then create a new workflow or create a new folder, and this would be pages, and then you would create one for create, one for delete, and so on and so forth. All right, now let's go into the home flow. And here you can see that the first step, this is pretty easy and short. And here you can see that the first step would be to capture the user reply to the variable of the last utterance, which basically means that the client will initiate the conversation, right? So you could probably give them a phone number, which they can add to their contacts in WhatsApp, and then just start writing and interacting. The second step would be to have the AI respond. And this is the prompt I'm using: respond to the user who just said this, last utterance. He initiated this conversation by sending this. Ideally, this was a greeting. In that case, just shortly greet back. After this, we're going to check whether he has already logged in by checking for those 3 variables, which are the username, the domain, and the API key. And we're saying if any of this is empty, then we're prompting them to enter his login data, right? And we're going to jump into the login component. If this is not the case, then we will just greet them directly with the option menu and what they would like to do. Now, if we jump into the login component, then you will also see that this is a very simple 3-step process. So we will start asking for the username, for the WordPress username, capture this into a username variable, as we also do with the API key and the domain. And this is already it. And then it will start to, or it will continue with the flow in at this part. Now, in regards to security and data privacy, this might not be the most professional way of doing this, storing this kind of sensitive data just here. So a more professional way would be to hash these with some kind of encoding algorithm like AES-256, and then to store them in a dedicated database, and then to retrieve them only if they are needed, and all of this. But for simplicity's sake, we're going to do it like this, but please keep this in the back of your mind if you're dealing with a sensitive site. All right, now what do you need to rebuild this? First of all, you will need Voiceflow. So head over to voiceflow.com, and this will be like the core software that controls our AI assistant and the control flow. And sign up or sign in. And after you have done that, you will be able to enter your agent, and this will be the WordPress, the Voiceflow backend. And we're going to go through all of this in a minute. The next thing would be obviously to have a WordPress site, to have a WordPress backend site. And if you go over there into the WordPress backend and head over to the users and then into the profile, then you will have this little section here which says application passwords. And this is where you create your API token, right? So just give it a name, hit add new application password, and it will give you the key, which you can then later on use to connect in Voiceflow to the API. And the next thing would be to use Flowbridge. And this is a platform which enables you to connect your Voiceflow agent to the Meta platform like WhatsApp. And just head over to flowbridge.app, sign up or sign in as well. If you have done that, you will be able to access the admin dashboards and the admin view. And let me just move myself over here. And then you can see that you will basically need 3 simple steps. First of all, set up a client company, then a Voiceflow project, and then the client integration itself. So if you want to set up a client company, just hit new client company, give it a name, hit create, and that's already it. After this, you go to Voiceflow projects. And when you are there, go to new Voiceflow project. And then you can select the company you have just created. Give it a name, any name you want, and then you would need the project ID and the Voiceflow API token. And both of these are able, or you are able to get both of these in the Voiceflow backend. So head back to Voiceflow, to the Voiceflow backend, and then hit 4 or jump into the integrations panel. There you have the API keys section, and you have the web chat. And here you will find your project ID. So this will be the one you will need in Flowbridge as well. So if you head over there, back over there, then you have the project ID and the Voiceflow API token. Hit create, and that's already it. And then as a final step, you go to the client integration, go to new client integration, select the company you have just created, select the project you have just created, go over to next, give it a name. Don't need to enter the slug, that's going to be generated automatically. Select your channel, which will be WhatsApp for our project. And then you will be able to log in with Facebook, and you will be able to enter your phone number and to create a WhatsApp business account. But I'm not going to go into this, but I will show you this link or this video, which is from Flowbridge themselves. And this is exactly how you do this, how to connect Voiceflow to WhatsApp easily. And if you've done that, you're all set up with everything we need. All right, now after the login, we will ask the user, as you can see here, what he would like to do, and then present him basically with the main menu, which is also a separate component. And then you can probably list these options if you're starting out, because at the end of the day, if you are trying to rebuild the whole WordPress backend, then you can obviously not present them with all of the options. So it would be a better way to just leave it as an open-ended question, and then the user can just type in what he wants to do. And we're going to go to the create and the read flow, and the delete and update flow are actually pretty simple. So we're going to go through the create flow a little more in depth. So this is an intent, a create post intent. So if we go to the intents to check them, then you will see we have a posts create, and there you have a lot of utterances. Please create a new post for me. Can you help me with a new blog post? I need to write a new article, and so on and so forth. And this has worked great, by the way, and this will end up in 90% of the cases in this flow, and this is working. So you can just copy this. Now, if we take a look at the flow itself, we will first use a AI response again. And this is the prompt. The user has asked to create a WordPress post. Shortly confirm that you will help him to do that as per his request. Now, in regards to the flow itself, if we zoom out a little, then you can see that this is also not too complicated. And this is a alternate solution, if you will. So you have the blue column, if you will, and the green column, and both of them represent the title creation or the content creation. And the upper flow is the manually created button, the manually created post, and the bottom one is the AI created post. So we will give the user the option. Do you want to write the blog post yourself, or would you like me to help you? And then he can basically choose between those two options. If he chooses to do the upper one, we ask for the title, and we ask or we capture this in the last utterance, and then we're using AI again. By using this prompt, the user wants to write a WordPress post. He just confirmed that he wants to write that post on his own. You ask him to provide you with the title, analyze the user's response to this. This is the response. Now output only the title of the post and nothing else. Because remember, if you have a WhatsApp conversation, then if you ask him, I want, what should be the title of your post? Then he might respond with something like, I want the title of my post to be da da da. So obviously in that case, you don't want to capture the I want the title of my post to be inside the title variable, right? So you need AI to extract the actual title and what he means to basically output this and only put this into the final variable. And this is what we're doing. So we're capturing this, what the AI outputs in the WordPress post title variable. Now, the next step is just to confirm this. So the title is, and then output the variable, and then yes or no. If it is not, we will just loop back to the beginning and then have the conversation start all over again. And if it is, then we will head back to the content section and we will start writing. And obviously you could do this a lot more detailed and a lot more complex, because in this case as well, you could ask him, use AI again to set the content and to analyze what the actual content is. Maybe he just gives a description of what he wants to write. Although he said he wants to write on his own, sometimes the user does not adhere to what he says on his own. So we want to keep it flexible. But yeah, basically this is what it leads to. And before we get into this last part, we'll have a short look into the bottom part, which is to let the AI help by creating that post, right? So ask for the topic, and this is basically exactly the same. And they capture this into the last utterance. And this is something interesting, because what this does is, if we check this, then you will see the user has asked you to support him with writing a blog post. He was asked for the first provide topic for that post. This is what he said. Create a list of up to 5 title suggestions. Output your answer using the following JSON structure. And then I have created a very simple JSON structure to output the title suggestions that the AI has created. And then I'll give him an example. And then the final part of the prompt, do not respond with anything else other than the JSON response, since your output will be directly injected as the input for another function. And this is exactly what we're doing, because here we have a custom function, which you will be able to use if you copy this project or if you download the template. And what this does is basically take the AI response, this JSON formatted AI response, and generate buttons out of this, so that the user will be able to choose any of these title suggestions rather than answering, I want title number 1, or I want the title that's called like this. So he can just click a button and then decide on one of those titles that the AI has suggested. So this is a convenient way of providing the user with a selection. All right, now the next part is just to confirm this. There are a couple of technical things here, and After this, we just basically have the same thing. So we ask for the content, and then of course we would let the AI generate the content. So the user is aware of the fact that he would just give a description or a more specific information about what he wants to write about. And then we will output this as the actual content. Now, finally, what is happening here is that we are using another custom function, and this is basically just an API call to the WordPress API. And this is exactly what we need the API key and the username for as well. And here you can see why, because these are the input variables that we are using to map the variables inside a function. So we have the API key, the domain, and the username, and then we are using the post content and the post title and map this with the according variables inside that function. And we will take a look at this function in a minute. And after this had happened, we will give the user a confirmation and also retrieve the link of that newly created post, and then he will be able to directly have a preview of what this step or this function has created, and then just a link back to the main menu. Now let's take a quick look into that function we talked about, into this create post function. So I'm going to head back into the main menu and then over to functions. And here we have a couple of functions, and this is the one we just talked about. So the create new post function. So we are not going to worry about this. This is basically just about encoding. The interesting part is what's happening here, because here you can see that we have our input variables, right? And this is where we are taking in the title and the content, so the one that the user has provided us with, right? And we're saving this into a post data object. Then we're going to put it in the right format, and after this we are just going to hit this URL, which is provided by WordPress itself and considering the domain of that specific user, and is then just sending over this data into that site. And this is already it. And of course, you can use the API step, Voiceflow's integrated API step for this. However, I personally like the custom functions feature a lot because it gives you a lot of flexibility and you can do a lot more with that. And but for this case, you could also, if we head back to our post create flow, double click on this, then you could also, of course, use the API step from the dev menu, and then you would enter all of those variables and parameters inside of the API function. So you would choose the request type, then you would answer the URL where you can also add variables, right? And you would just rebuild what I have just shown you within that function, use the according headers and parameters and everything you would need to do exactly the same. So you don't need to use this, but it gives you a lot more flexibility and power. Now let's jump into the read flow. So what happens here? If we jump into here, then you can see that there are two intents. One is to retrieve all of the posts, and one is to retrieve a specific one. And if we zoom out again, then you can see that this is also not too complex and that they are basically even interacting with each other. And we are going to take a look at this. So the first step would be to have an AI response again. So the user has asked to see a specific post. This is what he said. Ask him for the ID of that post. Now, as you know, we do need an ID of a specific post if we want to use the WordPress API for this. Because if we take a look at the WordPress API, then remember this is the API reference or the API docs. And if we jump into this description and go to retrieve a post, then you will see that this is the endpoint we are trying to hit, right? So we have our URL, and this is the endpoint, and then at the end of this is the actual query ID of that post we want to have, right? Now, if you know the WordPress backend, then you know that you are able to basically get your ID or the ID of a post if you are hovering over this, or if you're also clicking on this, and then you will basically get what you see now below my picture, which is the URL, and then you have this query parameter which says post equals and then the ID 1459, right? So this is where you get the ID of a post. Now, this is what the WordPress API needs to retrieve this. So if you have this ID, then it will save this into a variable, and if there is a match, it will just use this and hit the API again. So this is a custom function again, and I will show you how the custom function differs in regards to the integrated API step in a minute. And here you can see what's happening. So we have our input variables again, those 3 credential parts. This is wrong, by the way, I just saw this. And yes, and if we are successful, if this is successful, the API key, then it will output the title and the content of that post it found. Now, if we are being honest, who knows the ID of a specific post, right? Because if you wanted to have this ID, you would basically be inside of the WordPress backend already, and then this wouldn't make much sense. So what makes more sense would be to have a search, right, which would consider to look for the content and for the title of a specific post. Because if you're a user and you want to read a post, then chances are, if you have more than 10 posts, you don't know the ID of them, but you do know the title or what you wrote before, right, or what it's about. And you can use this to trigger the search API endpoint. And this is what we're doing here. So we have this prompt, which is a set AI. You have asked the user to provide you with a WordPress post ID. Kindly offer him to help you, or your help. And this is a description. You can read this on your own if you're downloading the template. This is basically a very specific prompt to make sure that it adheres, that the output of the AI adheres to the structure we need of the search string to use this for the API call we're going to use, right? Because this is going to get, or is going to append into a URL, and then we are using this to look for the specific post. And so it's important that it adheres to a certain structure, right? And what's happening here, or what's output here by the AI, is then saved into this variable called post search string. And if this is successful, then it will output what it found, and which is basically a list or a title and the ID of that post that it found, or of the posts that it found. And as you can see, that this goes into the second flow, which basically deals with the posts retrieve all intent. So this is actually a lot more easier than the single post retrieve, because this just needs the, you can see if you check this custom function again, which also is just an API call, then this just needs the 3 credentials we already have, right? And then it will just retrieve all the posts there are. There's a limit, I think, of 10 posts per page or something, but you can set this up in the function or in the call. And this will lead to the same thing. So it will output a bullet list of those posts, including the ID after the title. We saw this in the demo with within parentheses. And then the next step, what do you want to do next? Now, what I wanted to show you is the difference between the custom function for this and the integrated Voiceflow API step. Because imagine if you have this custom function, and we're going to take a look into this as well. Custom function and then get post titles. Then again, this might look a little complicated if you are not familiar with this, but where the magic happens is this part. And this says to loop over all the titles it found and then output them one by one, no matter if it's just one or if it's 10. You know, so this gives you a lot more flexibility. And if you're would be using the WordPress, the Voiceflow API step for this, then you would have to manually enter that you want to get the first, then the second, then the third, and then save each of them into a separate variable and then output them each one individually. And this makes this a lot more static and tedious to deal with because you don't know the number of results, right? So where this is handy is when it comes to dynamically pulling information and outputting them. And as you can see, this is only one output variable, and this is already a bulleted list of all the post titles. And here you can even see the structures. So you have the bullet, the literal bullet, then you have the variable, which is the title of that post. Then there is then the opening parentheses, and then the post ID, and then the closing parentheses, and then it just joins all of them into a list. And this is the get post titles function. All right, and then finally, let's just quickly jump into the two remaining flows we've already seen. And these are the posts delete and post update workflows. And if we jump into this one, the delete one first, then you can see that it's a very simple flow. So it just asks the user for the ID of that post he wants to delete. Right, so captures this into the post ID variable again, and then triggers the this function again, this custom function again, and this is something you can easily replicate one-to-one in with the Voiceflow integrated API step. So there's no actual need to do this with a custom function, except if you wanted to make this a little more complex. But at the end of the day, it would basically do the same. And of course, here you can also get a lot more complex because again, you would need to know the ID of that post you want to delete, especially if you're deleting this. And you could therefore also integrate the search function in here and output what it found, and then ask the user if he really wants to delete this, or have like a confirmation button or anything. But this wasn't necessary for this demo because you know how it goes and how it works now. The same with the update function. In this case, obviously, the update workflow. In this case, obviously, you would need a little more information. So what's the ID of the post you want to update? Then what's the title of your new post that you want to replace, right? And then what's the new content of that new post? And then you also trigger an API call for this. Again, this one is done with a custom function. And here you have a little more variables again. So you have the new content, the new title, and the post ID you would need, and then output the new content again, just for confirmation's sake. But this is basically always the same. And yeah, this is already it. All right, now I hope you liked this video, and I especially hope that this has gotten you some food for thought, right? Because, you know, we tend to think about customer and front-end facing chatbots rather than back-end and business owner focusing assistants, right? Because, as you have seen, not only will the business owner be able to maintain and administer his own system just by using natural language, but you can also expand and extend the features that are integrated into that native backend system. WordPress is just an example, but there are a ton of software systems that you can hook into to basically take care of. And this is a massive selling point because you are providing a lot of increased value at the end of the day. Imagine if, for instance, not only would you in this case use the AI assistant to create posts for the title and the content, but also provide them with image creation, or let the AI assistant be controlled via voice, or let the comments that a business owner might receive be responded to using AI, so automatically. And this potential has a lot of value. And this is something that I believe we need to focus more on and has a lot of business potential. So I hope you liked this video. Thanks for subscribing, thanks for liking, and I hope to see you next time.